that we're going to have a special meeting prior to our regularly scheduled meeting, during which we'll entertain 3 agenda items, beginning with a very unusual, I think, item for our agenda, but quite a happy one nonetheless. And we're here tonight to recognize individual citizens in our community who functioned in such a way to perform life-saving services for one of our town employees. And with that little bit of backdrop, I'll ask Sergeant Colson if he would come to the podium and we'll get started. Is your chief running out on you?
They're actually coming in right now.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Excuse me. Welcome.
How y'all doing?
We're good. How are you?
Sorry if I was late.
No,
That's
you're
okay.
good. Right on time.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Town Council. It's an honor and a privilege to be here tonight, to stand before you to recognize 2 local heroes. On September 30th, about 3:30 in the morning, a tragic event almost took place on Paxton Lane here in Edenton. But because of these 2 individuals here, tenacity and displaying the nosy neighbor concept, Ms. Shane Bunch and Angel Riddick saved the life of Mr. Bobby White, who coincidentally he works for our town and is a valued member of the town family. Ms. Bunch and Ms. Riddick, they were just getting home after a long night. They were tired and they were ready to go to bed. They had their keys in their hand, unlocking the front door, and they heard what they thought sounded like an alarm. So they kept listening and didn't realize that they were smelling smoke. They followed the sound of the alarm and realized there was a smoke alarm going on. It was coming from the neighbor, Mr. Bobby White's house. So they walked over and they saw smoke coming from inside the house. And that caused them to both to spring into action. Ms. Bunch started knocking on the front door, which was locked. And Ms. Riddick dialed 911. Ms. Bunch was able to get Mr. White to come to the door. So Ms. Riddick ran. And you can see when she walked in, with her leg was in a cast that night. And she ran to Mr. White's sister's house, who lives right down the road, to get her. And about this time, Miss Bunch, she decided Mr. White wouldn't come to the door, so she pushed the door in with her shoulder to get inside. She was able to force it open. Once they got inside, they woke Mr. White. He had fallen asleep. About this time was when the police and fire department arrived from them calling 911. Now, if Ms. Riddick and Ms. Bunch had not taken the actions they did that night and instead went inside and went to sleep, this event could have had a very different and possibly fatal outcome. So I can get both of them to come up. And Mr. White. Now, the police department would like to thank you for your actions that night and call up the mayor to present you things.
Ladies, it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the town of Edenton, and I'm sure
Angel.
Yeah. To recognize both of you as local heroes, taking the extra step, thinking that someone was in need or in danger, or both in this case, and feeling the desire and the need to proceed such as you did. It's a wonderful gesture on your part, looking after one another in a tough situation. And Bobby and I are good friends, man. I don't know what I'd do without Bobby to holler at every day down the street. So thank you all again, and I'll read the certificate to you that we'll proudly present to you again in recognition of your heroism. The Edenton, North Carolina Police, from the Edenton, North Carolina Police Department, to all who shall see these greetings, know that because of the quick response offered by Angela Riddick and Shane Bunt, we do award her the following recognition, life-saving award in appreciation of your meritorious actions in rendering aid that helped save the life of Bobby White on September 30, 2018. Conferred at the town of Edenton, North Carolina, this 22nd day of October in the year of our Lord, 2018. And the certificate is signed by our police chief, Henry A. King, Jr. And again, thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Bobby, feel free to say something too if you like. You're not afraid of speakers.
Sure ain't. I just thank God that they was up that day. The Lord woke me up with them helping me. They saved my life. I want to thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you, ladies.
All right, thank you.
That's all the time. All hours.
Okay, moving on with the next item on our agenda for this evening under the special meetings agenda portion. As is our custom here, whenever the town of Edenton annually makes contributions to any of our boards and commissions or other organizations in the community that render valuable services to both the citizens and our visitors, we ask that the organization come before the town council to give us a brief accounting of the things they were able to accomplish in the past year, and hopefully some insight as to what their plans are in the coming year. And tonight we're pleased to have with us Judge Chris Bean, who is the current chairman of the Edenton Historical Commission. So Chris, if you would take the podium, and we'd be interested and happy to hear from you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I have to say to you is a little anticlimactic after the last presentation, but I this opportunity to appear in front of you. First of all, to be able to tell you a little bit about the Edenton Historical Commission and what we're doing, and especially to have the opportunity to thank the Town Council for all that you have done to help us over many, many years, and it's not just financially, but in many other ways as well. In Edenton, we have so much going on that I think sometimes people get a little bit confused about who each organization is. I had one lady sort of attack me on Saturday about something, and I said, whoa. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And she had given a contribution to another organization in town, and they were not living up to what she thought they should be doing. And that made me think, well, you know, maybe I need to just give a little bit of history on what the Edenton Historical Commission is. The commission was actually chartered by the North Carolina legislature, but it is not a state agency, and we are not state employees, and we receive absolutely no financial help from the state of North Carolina or any other governmental agency other than the town of Edenton and Chowan County. But our purpose in our charter is to encourage preservation, restoration, and to present the town of Edenton and Chowan County as a historic, educational, and aesthetic place for the benefit of the citizens of the town and the county, for the benefit of visitors, and for the state of North Carolina. We have the power to acquire and hold, repair, restore, and improve property, to maintain a collection of historic objects and things that pertain to the history of Edenton and the county, and to develop programs in the county and the town to foster research and to encourage preservation and to educate the citizens of Edenton and Chowan County. That is our mission. That is what we're chartered to do, and that is what we are very seriously doing here in Edenton. And we're doing that all privately through the generosity of many people by seeking grants. Sometimes I'm embarrassed when we have to ask for money to do these things, but it's such a worthwhile cause that the embarrassment goes away in doing that. But what the town of Edenton has done is been a partner with the Edenton Historical Commission since the Barker House was moved down Broad Street in 1952 and put right over there across the street on property that is owned by the town of Edenton. So this has been a partnership. It's been a wonderful partnership over however many years that is, almost 70 years. What we are doing to meet those purposes is we do maintain the Barker House at no charge to anyone to come in. We're open 7 days a week. We're the only organization in town that's open all 7 days a week where people can come. Sunday afternoon's a booming time in the Barker House because all of the other visitors who are in town have nowhere else to go, and so they're there. This past year, we had about 24,000 visitors who went through the Barker House. And of course, these people were not just going through the Barker House, but they're shopping downtown, they're eating in our restaurants, and they're doing great things for the economy of Edenton. We have bit an awful lot in the last year, probably more than we actually have funds to do. We have entered into an agreement with Chowan County for the next 25 years to maintain and preserve and keep open the 1825 jail, which is the oldest jail in the state of North Carolina. Let's see, Dawson is here. He's our chairman of that and has done wonderful work on that. When we took that over, it was in close to a state of collapse. And we feel like we have managed to save that, and people are absolutely fascinated when they go through the jail. Who would have ever thought that, but it's true. We, in January of this year, were informed that the state would no longer pay for the docents on the trolley. And so the commission, without any funds whatsoever, at that point stepped up and said, well, we'll do that. And we have provided the trolley. Of course, the trolley would not be possible if it were not for you, as far as owning it, maintaining it, and running it. But the docents on the trolley give an interpretive history of Edenton to all of the people who ride the trolley, and it is one of the most popular, enjoyable, and educational things in Edenton. We every year put on the Christmas tour that's about to come up in December, which brings thousands of people to Edenton and who spend the weekend again, shop and enjoy all of the amenities of Edenton. We have maintained, and are expanding the museum trail here in Edenton. All of the signs that you see around in front of the buildings that give people who are walking around Edenton information about the different spots. I've learned a whole lot about Edenton just walking around reading those signs myself. They've been extremely popular. We have an exhibit of women of distinction in Edenton. It's in the Barker House that honors not just Penelope Barker, who had the Tea Party, but all the women through the generations who have contributed wonderfully to Edenton. We are establishing right now a new permanent exhibit in the Barker House that is dedicated to artisans in Edenton. Over hundreds of years who have created furniture, built fabulous buildings. We are partnering with the Kaddish Church, which I know many people in Edenton have never been in the Kaddish Church, but it's one of the most magnificent and beautiful and architecturally significant buildings anywhere around. It had fallen into bad disrepair, and now the efforts being made through the National Trust and Edenton and the church to save that church and bring it back to life. There's a big segment of Edenton history that we feel like was ignored for a long period of time, and that's the African American history in Edenton, which is a very proud history. And through the trolley tour that goes past many magnificent buildings that were built by African American contractors and gives a history of that, then that part of Edenton is now made known to our visitors. Also, some of our museum trail signs are dedicated to outstanding African American citizens through the years. And then again, of course, the Kaddish Church and our efforts there. So we do a lot, and I think we do a lot that maybe people don't realize that we do. And we could not do that without the generosity of the citizens of Edenton. And frankly, we could not do that without the town of Edenton. And so besides telling you what we do, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate all of the efforts that you make, Anne Marie makes in working with us and making all of these things possible. Thank you so much for the chance to be here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chris. And as always, with the Edenton Historical Commission, speaking for the citizens at large, we do greatly appreciate the services and the opportunities and everything that goes along with the commission itself and the use of the property that y'all maintain. You're very, very generous and gracious with that, and for that we're thankful as well. So we do have a good partnership going.
We do.
We'll keep it that way.
And we do in the whole town among the organizations.
Right.
It's a great, great thing that I'm not sure exists in many other places quite like it does here.
Well, thanks for your time and your commission's time and dedication to all that you do for us. We appreciate it.
Well, and I just want to say that, you know, Chris retired and now he's almost full-time at the Edenton Historical Commission. He's putting in hours after hours, so.
Well, Sambo asked me to be the chairman, and I said, oh, well, sure, I've done this a couple times before. The world is different now from what it was. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, the final item under our special meeting tonight is a resolution we've been asked to consider and hopefully get a motion to pass. Anne Marie, would you brief us on where we are with that, please?
Yes, Mayor. The council previously adopted a resolution back in September that authorized us to submit a grant application to the North Carolina Department of Commerce's building reuse program. And the application was reviewed, extensively vetted, and some questions were raised by a group that's located in the North Carolina Finance Center. And we had the financials vetted by the North Carolina Small Business Technology Development Center up at Elizabeth City State. So we think there just needs to be some communication between those two entities. Ultimately, the Rural Infrastructure Authority at their meeting last Thursday did not act on the application. We were invited to provide additional information to help clarify and then have the application considered at the December meeting of that board. And just to protect and make sure that we got everything straight, I wanted you all to adopt the resolution specifically authorizing us to resubmit this. I don't want there to be any hiccups along the way. And the person who we need to speak with in Commerce is out of the country and should be back one day this week, so we'll try to get some answers and I'll keep you posted. But in the meantime, we would like or would appreciate it if you would adopt the resolution authorizing us to resubmit the application.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody have any questions in that regard? If not, Chair would entertain a motion.
Well, I have a,
yeah.
I represent Mr. Reardon, so I think last time I recused myself, so I think I need to ask y'all to recuse me this time also.
Okay, thank you.
Totally for it, but I mean, you know.
Yeah. Chair would entertain a motion to accept Councilman Dixon. Any further questions on that? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Okay, and now moving back to the resolution itself. Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. Thank y'all. Any further questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right, we will send that forward. Thank you very much. And that concludes our special meeting agenda for tonight, so we'll move into our committee meetings. First committee to meet tonight will be Public Works, and that's chaired by Councilman Stallings, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 items on our agenda tonight. Excuse me. The first one will be a request from a citizen. We got a letter from a citizen requesting that we lower the speed limit on North Granville Street. Anne Marie has asked the chief of police to put the speed limit machine or speeds machine, whatever you call it, on that street and check and see what's going on down there and this type of thing. Emery, if you'd like to make any more comments on that, or I guess at this time we need to wait until we do the assessment on it.
Sure. Yes, Chief will deploy our speed limit recording machine. It has radar and a computer system that it's able to collect speed limit data, and then we'll analyze that. We'll also look at, see if any traffic incidences there, you know, what our history is for enforcement, as well as if there's been any accidents.
Will the speed trailer be located between Carteret and Queen on Granville Street?
We'll probably move it around.
Just we move around, okay.
But on North Broad Street, where Roger's here tonight, but the area in which he's requested
On Granville,
The-
but
the
it's,
Granville.
I'm looking at Carteret to Queen, somewhere in that area, okay. Because that seems to be where the speed really picks up.
Okay. And just so everybody's aware, North Granville Street is maintained by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So the council doesn't have jurisdiction over the speed limit, but you certainly can make your opinion and your wishes known to DOT. So if you were to decide that a reduction is warranted, you would need to adopt a resolution, and then we would send that to DOT, and they would do an analysis.
And you mentioned history. Several years ago, we did reduce that speed limit to 25, and we had an uproar from the community, and to the degree we had to change it back to 25, to 35.
Yes, I
I'm sure
remember
everybody
that.
remembers that.
But one other thing we'll do too is we'll let DOT know about the request, and we'll ask them for their advice and opinion now, so that we can factor that in when staff does their investigation.
How long ago was that?
15
I think
years.
it's been at least 20 years.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the second item, we have USDA Engineering Services Agreement. And Anne Marie, I'm gonna let you take the lead on that.
Sure. This is an agreement for the Wooten Company, and you all have previously authorized an agreement with the Wooten Company to do this work. This is the engineering and analysis that needs to be done, evaluating options for the upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant. USDA has received a pile of money, and we believe that we are eligible for a significant grant to help fund this capital project. But in order to apply for the grant, everything is electronic. You have to download an agreement that meets USDA's requirements. So you saw the agreement. It's tailored. It's made by USDA for engineers and local governments. And so we're asking that you approve this agreement so that we can proceed with our grant application. If we're funded, and it probably is going to be another couple months before we know what level will be funded, then we would come back to you to formally authorize the Wooten Company to proceed with the preliminary engineering design.
Do we need to take action on that tonight, or do we just need to forward that to
Forward
full
it
council?
for council, please.
All right, if it's okay with Sambo and Reverend Poole, we'll just send that to full council.
Yep.
Okay. All right, moving on to our third item, our third and final item is resolution accepting state revolving loan for our sanitary system project. And we have received our formal offer and acceptance letter from the State Division of Water Infrastructure for the $1 million zero interest 20-year loan for our sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration. I can't even read. Infiltration abatement project. Henry, you want to?
Sure. Council's been working on this project for the last year and a half, and this is a great place to be in. Virginia and I worked with the local government commission, and they approved the town entering into this loan. That they found that debt is acceptable. And the next step now is for you to formally accept the offer from DEQ for the loan so that we can start drawing down the money. You have had to pay for the engineering work, but will be reimbursed, and then going forward, the work will be, we'll get reimbursed from the loan. And this project, the I&I, is the videotaping of the sanitary sewer system and identifying lines that need to be cleaned, then also identifying lines that may need to be slip lined, and then finally identifying lines that need to be replaced. And this $1 million grant will be $1 million loan, will be used to fund that work. And just so you're aware, I told the council previously that $1 million over 20 years, it's a $50,000 a year debt service payment, and that translates to about $1.60 a month increase for our, I hate to call anybody average, but the average residential customer would see their sewer bill go up by about $1.60 a month.
This will help us identify those roads that are maybe up for resurfacing. Some of those, if some of those lines do need to be replaced, we can hold off and
Yes.
or get to those first or whatever. Okay.
Yes, the engineer, the Wooten Company, with Corey's assistance, are reviewing the results. We've done, I guess, Corey, phase 1 of the CCTV work, and are they back in town? Did I see them?
We've got the second phase complete. We're reviewing that. We're using that along with the program that we did back in August for root control before we were able to get back in October. So they should be in before the end of the year for the third and final round. But as far as the sewer leak goes, the survey and crews were in where we had identified using 2/3 of the town sewer system to get started with that. So they were in this past week, and we have identified more places. So.
And then Corey reviews the results of the videotape along with the Wooten Company to make sure that we don't have any conflicts with sewer lines that are going to be ripped up on streets that are scheduled to be repaved.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any other comments on that? Anne Marie, excuse me.
My comment is a procedural one. I did not hear your committee forward with the speed limit
We
request.
did not do that. We were
Okay.
waiting until we get police report and this type of thing.
Okay, but do you need you don't need anything you can do that from committee, or does the council have to vote to carry on?
You can certainly put it on the agenda directing us to do that research or gather that information, or
I mean, it's,
I just assumed that was already a directive, but, I mean, we can do whatever you think.
I mean, I don't know, I'm asking for interpretation on procedure. I didn't want to not send it forward and be out of order in some fashion.
we won't have the information. I mean, we're going to need more than 2 or 3 weeks until when the council meeting is, so if you would direct us to have a report back at the November committee meeting, that would make sure that we keep it on task.
Okay, so we can just go with a simple directive from this meeting. Doesn't have, okay. That works. Thank you.
Okay, again, if it's okay with Sambo and Reverend Poole, we'll send that to full council. Okay. So yeah, that's all we have.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we will hear from our Utilities Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Bond, please, sir.
Yes, Mayor, we have one item on the agenda for tonight. A letter of support, broadband initiative, USDA funding, NC Great Grant Opportunity. Two gentlemen, after I present this, we were invited here tonight. Mr. Wendell, he is the chamber director, and Mr. Mallory Dehem, did I say that right?
Denham.
Okay. He's the executive director of the Edenton Shawan Partnership. They have done some study on this matter, so after I finish, if you two gentlemen would have anything to add to help me out here, I would greatly appreciated. Okay. The North Carolina General Assembly recently appropriated grants funds for broadband providers to apply for to expand internet service in the Tier 1 counties. We are interested from a potential new provider to our area in Eastern Shore Communications. This internet firm is located out of Maryland, and they are trying to get their feet within the doors here. The company provides service to Elizabeth City and Pasquotank County now and has applied for USDA funding for the county of Camden County. Eastern Shore wants to come to Edenton and to Chewan County, and they would need to apply for a grant from North Carolina. We do not have anything to do with it. That would be upon the company. But what we want the council to do, the town of Edenton to do, is to send a letter responding to this, telling them that we greatly need this and we support this effort. And if these two gentlemen back here could help me out and come up with anything different, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Town Councilman, and Town Manager. Just to add to Councilman Bond's comments, the Edenton Partnership and the Edenton Chamber have entered into an agreement with Eastern Shore Communication to do a thorough broadband survey of the county, focusing specifically on underserved and unserved areas. The grant they're going to apply for is a great grant, and the process is going to open up sometime around the first of the year. They have a meeting set for November 1st. It's going to outline how the process will work. As Councilman Bond indicated, it's set for Tier 1 counties only, which we are one, and although there's only $10 million appropriated, we feel very strongly that we have a good chance of reaping some of this money. Eastern Shore Communications is responsible for, part of our agreement is they're responsible for applying for this grant and any other grants that may become available, including a USDA grant, which should open up sometime in 2019. That's pretty much it. And I'll try to answer any other questions if you have any.
I just wanted to mention, Wynn and Mallory helped me out, that we had encouraged Eastern Shore to reach out to our local provider, or one of the local providers, truly local providers, NetChange. And I believe that they are working on a relationship.
They are partnering together. I'm not sure in what means, but they have talked and they are trying to work out some type of cooperation, collaborative agreements.
Yeah, so we didn't want to be just supporting the new people to come in and take over, and we're very optimistic about that partnership.
Where's the Eastern Shore located? Eastern Shore Communications located?
Maryland.
Maryland,
Yeah.
and they have an office in Elizabeth City.
I don't have a question, but I got a comment. Any way we can get any amount of broadband here to help anybody, whether it's starting a new business or helping our education system, helping the kids that live in the county that don't have internet so that they can be on the same level as far as education as, you know, people that can get internet right here in town. I'm all for it. Push as hard as you can push. Please.
Definitely.
Thank you. We hope that there's going to be some additional activities that the council is going to become aware of here pretty soon.
Right. That's good.
It's interesting to me too, Wynn and Mallory, that, and to everyone, the recognition of the fact of there is not enough broadband in the rural areas of North Carolina has been expressed countless numbers of times by every leader in our public service at the state level. But nothing specifically or materially has happened to extend those services or that service to these regions. You all probably remember and recall the city of Wilson got tired of waiting and did it themselves, And so I'm delighted that this Eastern Shore organization sees enough potential in our region. I agree with Steve. Any way with anybody, and these are credible people. Don't mean that suggest that we would go with just anyone, but it's nice. We need it desperately, and it's also a great detriment to economic development. I mean, these companies, when they're looking around, Steve can attest to this more so than anyone up here, but it's a hard sell to get people to come to this part of the state. And if you're not 21st century broadband capable, that's going to be one of the first cuts that will cause them to go somewhere else. So, yes, indeed, have that. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, two gentlemen. So what we do, I need to send this forward or just?
Send it to the full council. That would be great.
Okay. Everybody agree? Okay. We want to send it on up to the full council.
All
That'll
right.
do it, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Great topic. Glad to see some activity. Next, we're here for our administrative committee chaired by Councilman Biggs, please, sir.
Mayor, we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. Our first one is the update of the neighborhood redevelopment plan. Elizabeth Bryant is here to give us a little PowerPoint, talk to us about what is going on with the redevelopment.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman Biggs, and Mayor. Anne Marie and I met some time ago with Councilman Bond regarding our neighborhood redevelopment zone efforts, and he asked that we give an update on where we are and what we've been doing, and also plan to meet with community partners and different groups throughout the community that are affected by this plan. And so we've put that in the works and are hoping to schedule some meetings soon to get this word out to the public. But tonight I've prepared a really brief PowerPoint to update you all on our efforts in the neighborhood redevelopment zone. I've got an update on an unsafe structure that happens to be within one of our zones, and we also have a minimum housing code update, and that'll be coming up as well on your agenda later. So first, I will start with our Mosley Street redevelopment zone. Mosley Street is, as you know, the western side of town, and it comprises both some houses on Mosley Street, a few on West Church Street, and also several properties on West Gale Street. We were informed by the tax office in the last couple of weeks that these two properties, 209 West Gale Street and 211 West Gale Street, are approaching foreclosure status. 209 West Gale Street, you may remember that there was a single-wide mobile home on that property that the town was able to partner with the county and the state to have removed through an abandoned mobile home grant removal program in the last maybe 2 years, but the lot itself has reached foreclosure status. That means it's going to go through the tax department's typical foreclosure process, and it'll be auctioned eventually at a foreclosure sale. The 211 West Gale Street is actually right next door to that vacant lot, and it's a bit more complicated. That property has reached foreclosure status, but the owner has declared Chapter 13 or filed for bankruptcy. And I communicated with the tax supervisor a little bit earlier today, and that can basically place that foreclosure status in a holding pattern until the bankruptcy is reconciled, or until the closing of that bankruptcy case. So we won't know yet what the status of that property is going to be until she gets further along, the owner gets further along in the bankruptcy process. Have any questions about West Gale Street before I move on? So moving over to the eastern side of town, to the North Oakham Street redevelopment zone, and I've got a map showing you, this is a portion of East Gale Street, and up at the top, East Albemarle So you may remember that the town now owns 123 East Gale Street and 136 East Albemarle Street. We've owned it almost a year now. We are drafting covenants and deed restrictions. The Edenton Historical Commission has agreed to hold those covenants and deed restrictions. The town attorney is currently looking over some model deed restrictions, and that would be set up to ensure that work begins within a certain period of time, that certain materials are used in the rehabbing of the property in a loose sense. This house is within our local historic district, so it will be governed by those guidelines. This property is outside of that boundary. If someone wanted to pursue tax credits, it's probably a 1940s brick structure. They could, and that the state would then hold them to the Secretary of Interior standards, but the town also wanted to set up some basic criteria for the redevelopment of properties once they transfer hands. And down here, you also see 116 East Gale Street. That's the Hannibal Badham Jr. house. They're kind of catty corner across from Cadiz Church. And we have heard this week that the appraisal for that property is almost done, almost complete. So we're hopeful to be able to move forward with that as soon as we can. That house in particular is of great historical significance, and we need to get it going on the rehab side of things. So still in the North Oakham Street neighborhood redevelopment zone, first I'll talk about, we're still on Gale Street, 145 East Gale Street, and we have an owner, Ms. Joyner, who's been really wonderful about keeping us up to date on her efforts. She lives out of town, was born in Edenton, but now lives out of town but wants to retire here. And she has been working for quite some time to make repairs to her property, and has unfortunately run into the situation where she's had a few contractors not live up to their end of the bargain. But we are working to help her find someone that will be reliable, and she is also working to be in Edenton more frequently to supervise the work so that she can see what's going on and ensure that it's done. You're also familiar with 212 East Gale Street. This is the lot that the town is partnering with Habitat to do the lot exchange with their property on Tyler Lane. So that should be wrapping up pretty soon, and that'll be another property that, although it's just a vacant lot now, that will be another place where a home can go and Habitat can put a family. This house, 205 North Oakham Street, is within this neighborhood redevelopment zone. We are citing it for unsafe building status, and we've got our Chief Building Inspector, Holly Colombo, here with us tonight, and he can answer any questions you might have about that. But the owner has been notified and a hearing has been set. The owner was not present, or a representative was not present for that hearing, so it moves to the next phase. And Mr. Colombo told me earlier today that that is a December 10th deadline for some sort of action to be taken by this owner to get in touch with the Building Inspections Office about their plans for demolition. You may recognize the house. This is one that's very close to Oakham Street, and these columns are no longer really doing what they were intended to do, and the building is in danger of collapse.
Elizabeth, can I just interrupt? And did we have that appraised, and we made an offer?
We did. We have attempted to purchase the property and talked with the owner about purchasing it with the intention of demolishing it once the town owned it. We have not been successful in those efforts. And last year when we did the house on Freemason Street, that was an unsafe building that we had to tear down, we asked the same engineer to do a survey for this property and another property on Johnson Street. So we have an engineer's report saying that this is an unsafe structure. And once you reach that place, you've got to keep the ball going. And so we've unfortunately not been able to convince the owner to take action without going through this process, so we've started the actual enforcement process.
All of these properties current with their property taxes.
Yes, they are.
And
Except
is-
those ones on West Gale Street that were in foreclosure. And then the 116 East Gale Street, the Hannibal Batten Junior House.
Does my memory serve me correct about 205 North Oakham? Isn't that where we had a lot of people that were camping out in there and doing drugs and all that and had to run them out? Am I correct, Chief, by chance? At 205 North Oakham, haven't we had some problems there with people homesteading, I guess?
I think you probably did in the past. The building now is boarded up, but you can tell that that was probably done because there was a lot of transient in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner owns another house next to this.
Right.
And then a house was torn down, or was it the store? The store was torn down. So there were 3 in a row. And this house and the small one next to it have been boarded up, but I think at one time they were open.
So the house that's next to it, 203.
Yes, it's a small
Right.
little house.
Is that one?
The engineer said it had not reached the point where we could declare it unsafe as far as a threat of in danger of collapse. But it's in our neighborhood redevelopment zone. It's vacant. It's dilapidated. So we're hopeful that that one will change hands and be rehabbed or torn down soon.
Excuse me, and just so that, to clarify, because that house is owned by a family member. It is not owned by the same person that owns the 2-story.
Right.
And we've had more positive interaction with that person about selling, so. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So 205 is completely secure, no one can get in there.
The engineer could not get in when he was doing his report.
Okay.
So he was able to access the one room in the back, I think, but he could not get into the main part of the front part of the structure.
Is 205 the house that he gave to a school? Or is that another house?
No, but I'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
That's coming up.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll leave East Gale Street and we'll move to the house that you're speaking of. So now we're still in the North Oakham Street Neighborhood Redevelopment Zone. Now we're on East Church Street. Same owner donated 304A and 304B East Church Street to Winston-Salem State University. We have just in the last week gotten the appraisal for this property and shared it with the endowment, the folks with the endowment for Winston-Salem State, and are prepared to bring it to you all. And the next step would be an offer to purchase. So we're hopeful that this will be the next one that the town can purchase. These houses are I would consider historically significant. They're one lot outside of the local historic district, but this front house in particular looks pretty old and could have parts that are, the front part could be older than the rear, and then the one in the back is like a 1940s little rental cottage. But both could be wonderful properties. They're in pretty good shape. I was able to go inside with the appraiser and could be rehabbed and turned into some good rental or owner-occupied property. So we're hopeful about that one. And then finally, and I know this is the next item on your agenda, or part of the next item on your agenda, and another reason that the chief building inspector is here. This property was cited for a minimum housing code violation. It's 215 East Church Street. It's a currently grandfathered boarding house. You may remember that in the spring we came to you requesting that you order the building inspector to order a repair, and if the repair is not made, then he can order the building closed and vacated. The owner, as of last week, had commenced repair of the HVAC, heat, that's required by minimum housing code. And so that stayed the chief building inspector's order to close and vacate the structure. And Holly, do you know if the work is completed yet?
They haven't called for the inspection, but they did it last week. They had 10 days for
Okay.
the company to call for the inspection.
And both building inspectors witnessed the contractors on site and working.
We'll both go to that.
So that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions about any of the things that I've talked about.
Going back to the first slide you had on redevelopment, North Broad. Go one more. I mean, I meant Oakham. Yeah. When you, no, back up one.
I'm sorry.
There you go. When you were talking about that you were trying to draft the covenants and deeds for 123 and 136. And I know we've owned these properties for a while now.
Yes.
I think you said almost a year. Do you have any idea how quick we will be getting these covenants and deeds so that we can get these properties out of our hands and get them into the hands of someone that
Right.
might want to fix them up?
I hope very soon. One of the stages that kind of we were stuck in was who should hold the covenants? Should town hold the covenants? Should Preservation North Carolina hold the covenants? Should another entity hold the covenants? And it was presented to us that the Historical Commission, being that they're like here in Edenton and a local body that's interested in the preservation and rehabilitation of historic homes in Edenton, would be a good source to hold those covenants, better than the town, in the sense that the idea is that once they transfer hands, the town can then release that responsibility of overseeing, other than the ones that are in the local historic district, exactly what is done. So that was good news to get that agreement, that they would agree to take that on. The next step is for the town attorney to draft the covenants. We have given him several models. You all had covenants on the Conger building that obviously he helped prepare. We passed on the Historical Commission's covenants that they set on St. George's Church when that changed hands, and then Preservation North Carolina also shared their covenants that they use in the city of Goldsboro for this type of effort. So we've got several models, and it's just going to be making it right for Edenton, and once that's done, we should be able to market the property. We want to have those ready to go so that when the sale does happen, they can be filed immediately, that there's not a delay.
So you think, just to give me an idea, you thinking by the end of December, the end of January?
I hope by the end of December we'll have those in place, and that 2019 can be the time where we begin actually unloading the properties and selling them.
Perfect.
Following along the same line, due to its very historic significance, is there anyone standing in line for the Badham House?
I'd love for Anne Marie to talk about that if
Sure.
you don't mind.
We have, well, we have had interest from, we're aware of interest from somebody privately
Okay.
that has contacted the owners.
On which house?
The
Hannibal Badham.
House that's on the bottom.
And then we have been talking with the state Department of Cultural Resources about wouldn't that be the most fabulous house for
That's
this
a beautiful house.
It is.
historic Edenton to have to help interpret our important African-American history. So we're working that path as well.
I've been working really hard on that.
Same.
I hope that, you know, it'd be, I think state ownership of that building would be fantastic. Are we going, when are we going to see
Dawson's next house.
Yeah. When are we going to see the video of?
November 13th.
Okay, because there's a new video out that Anne Marie helped create that is just really, and Elizabeth, that's just so fantastic that
It's just a tour.
no, it just shows this building, and it has the state historic preservation officers talking about the importance of 123 and 116 to the African American, culture here and also everywhere. I mean, this of statewide importance. So those are just really, really special buildings.
Were they both built by Mr. Banner?
One was built by senior, one was built by junior.
Amazing. Okay.
I think that's right. I think they're both built. I think
It
123 wasn't lived in by one of them.
Right, they
Yeah.
built it for an
Yeah.
employee
Right.
of theirs.
The brick one is the one that senior lived in.
Any other questions, comments for Elizabeth? Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate the update.
I feel like we need to give you a hand.
Oh.
So happy this happened.
Glad y'all know what we're up to.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have Dawson Tyler here tonight, and he has asked to make a brief presentation to us tonight regarding nuisance boarding room houses. So, Dawson, we're glad to have you. The microphone is yours.
Well, thank you so much for having me this evening. Dawson Tyler with Down East Preservation. I've been working a lot along Church Street, Oakham Street, West Church. Have some of my clients, friends that I've met in the area, and fellow concerned citizens about what we see as a real problem that's within our neighborhoods and is really holding these areas back. And that is these boarding homes that operate, in my mind, or in a lot of our minds, kind of outside any sort of guidelines. In preparation for this meeting, I wanted to go out and do a little research. I wanted to, try to figure out, what is a boarding house? How did they come about? And it's a typically American story. Boarding house, found its roots in the big cities across the East Coast. Back when people were coming looking for the American dream. Typically run by a resident owner, and they had people coming in and out and working as hard as they could to get a slice of America. Over the years, a lot of that spirit kind of faded, waned in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and then kind of lastly in the 90s. Most municipalities moved to shutter boarding houses, not to have any more boarding houses come up, because they had become areas of crime, of low standards for the inhabitants that were staying there. They were unsafe, and they were holding back the communities that they sat in. And it is my opinion, the opinion of these folks, and the opinion of many others that wanted to come to this meeting. I actually asked to have this meeting pushed back so that I could have a fuller representation of people in the community that are very focused on this, that's what's occurring with the property that was mentioned earlier, property on Oakham Street, property on West Church Street, property on Granville Street, and there are probably others that are not on my radar at all. To that end, to you as a council, I would want to ask yourselves, if you've seen these buildings, do you think that they are beneficial, these buildings are beneficial to the people that are staying there? Are they safe? Do they, put forth an environment that these folks can, thrive in and really commit themselves to whatever their passion is? And two, are these doing anything for this community? Are they beneficial for the community in which they sit in? And if the answer to both of those is yes, that they are beneficial to the people that stay in them, and they're beneficial to the community, then there's really nothing for me to talk about further, or any of the other folks that are here. But if you don't think that they are, I would suggest that we get creative about how to make them either better, or if they don't want to get better, have them move on, like they've done in many other towns. And in doing research, I went to the biggest city in North Carolina that's close by here, Raleigh, and just saw how Raleigh handled boarding houses. And they still do have boarding houses. They're all licensed, and they're governed. If you go on the Raleigh website, you can see all the steps that they take to keep these boarding houses places that really contribute to the well-being of the people that stay there, including having the owners be occupants of the building. I think that's a big difference. What we see in Edenton is we see a place, in my mind again, in my opinion, that is very low standard, if not substandard, that is attracting an element of society that it's just not good for these neighborhoods. It's keeping them down. And, you know, I think it's time that we get creative about either enforcing higher standards or doing something different than what we're currently doing. I know I have some other folks that wanted to speak. That's pretty much all I have on the topic, unless anybody has questions.
I just want to thank you for what you're doing for this community. I mean, these houses that you're rehabbing are just absolutely beautiful, and I hope you continue that. And I think this is something we really need to look at in the future. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate
And
it.
can you share your research with, you know, with Anne Marie, and
Sure.
I guess she can get it to Hood to see exactly legally what, you know, where we can go.
Absolutely.
Well, in the houses that you were talking about, I wanted to ask Elizabeth, would they be grandfathered in, number one? And if so, you know, if there's no way we can shut them down, I guess that's what I'm getting at. I like your idea because we've been talking a lot about Airbnbs and how safe are they? You know, and that's my main concern about Airbnbs, along with them taking away from other people who have invested a lot of money. But, you know, do we do inspections on these boarding houses? Do we go in and we make sure that the steps are right?
Are they meeting code? Are they meeting code?
Yeah, are they meeting the codes that they really need to meet? Do we do that?
I'll respond, and Elizabeth and Holly will jump in behind me, but our ordinance does not allow us to make an inspection unless there are observed code violations, or unless, I think it's 5 citizens sign a petition, and I forget what the exact language is, but Dawson and his neighbors have done that. And our plan originally was we thought we were going to jump out there and, you know, try to do an inspection once a month on the boarding houses and get everybody inspected. I think there are 6 in town, but the capacity from a staffing standpoint does not allow that. It took us almost 9 or 10 months to deal with the one, if they don't grant you access.
I think he was denied access.
He was denied access, and we're, yep, and so anyway, it has to be complaint driven, but there is a way for us to do that. In terms of, you know, owner occupied and licensed, you know, the license, that is something we'd be very interested in, and we'll, you know, look at that and share that with Hood. The owner occupied is something, again, that we'd have to get advice from Hood on. We asked, well, since we had a known violation on a boarding house by a specific owner, and that person owns another boarding house, does that give us the ability to do an inspection? And the attorney said no. So we'll continue to work on the inspections using the complaint process, and then look at, you know, can we amend the ordinance to require licensing?
That's what I was just getting ready to say. You said our ordinance doesn't allow us, so if it doesn't allow us, change the ordinance. I mean, that's one thing that this council certainly can do.
Anne Marie, can you explain this one thing? I think back in May, we voted to vacate and close that particular piece of property? And what happened from there?
You actually, you gave an extension, and I think it ended up that she had until August to make the repairs, and that did not happen. So then, even though you had already voted to vacate, Holly had to, oh, Holly, you explain what you had to do with.
Well, I got Elizabeth to contact the town attorney because I had to, the order has to come from the Tennessee magistrate or clerk of court. And it wouldn't be served on the owner from the way I understood it. It would have been served on the tenants because they would be violating the order. So they would be the ones that would be held responsible. But anyway, by the time we did that, she did have the heat and air company purchase the permit for it. And they scheduled the work, and that's the point we're at now. They finished that. They started Wednesday of last week. So I see.
Which was after the deadline?
Yeah. It was after the deadline. We were trying to get the legal procedure to get the warrant to serve, not the warrant, but the order to serve the property. Not the owner, but the tenant.
Yeah.
If I could just add a couple other things. So, separate groups of individuals that live in neighborhoods, not necessarily the one that I live in, individually filled out petitions in the March-April time frame of this past year on different boarding houses, not the one that we were discussing earlier. And, you know, one of the things that's kind of constant with me being in those neighborhoods and working with the people and the neighbors that are there is, and Chief King and I have talked at length about this, is you have a lot of folks that are actually afraid to call in and report what's going on in these places. Because it's just always bad, and the same players are always there, and you know, you literally have people living in fear in these neighborhoods.
Is there any way we could call around and see what other enlightened communities have done about it? I mean, I think that might be a good place to start, is that, you know, see what other people have done about it.
Well, we can do that. We can go on the listserv. I think Raleigh is as enlightened when it comes to zoning and being proactive, so that's a really good place to start as well. Yeah.
What is, we've used the word numerous times, grandfather. What's the timeline that all these houses fall under that allow them to continue to operate? When did that line, and could I go out and start a boarding house tomorrow?
No, and we are really tight on making sure that doesn't happen. We've had a couple instances over the last few years where somebody tried to do that, and we have to get Elizabeth and the police chief and the town attorney involved because it's a zoning violation. It is not allowed. The council changed the ordinance, I would say probably about 15 years ago, to prevent any new boarding houses. But you can't just say the existing ones have to cease operating under the zoning regulations. They have the right to be considered grandfathered, that they can continue to operate. They cannot expand, like they couldn't add on. And if they were to cease operating for a period of 180 days with the intention of not reopening, then they would lose their non-conforming status. And one of the things that we looked at with Ms. McLean's situation was once it was vacated, once the if the order had been successful, if she hadn't done anything, then would the clock start running on the 180 days? So.
And does grandfather mean the property or the person that owns it? So I could sell it to someone else and they could still run a boarding house under
as long as there's no lapse in
new ownership.
And that's the way it is with any non-conforming.
Yeah, I just wasn't clear on it.
Sure.
Well, Dawson, certainly thank you for bringing this more to our attention. And certainly I feel real comfortable that the administrative committee is going to pass this on to the full council, number one, but I feel pretty confident from what we've heard tonight that the council is going to certainly want some quick, fast answers as to what we can do and how we can, if we can't stop it, make sure, as you said, everything is in the house safe and proper for the people that are staying there. But hopefully, hopefully we can do more than that. I mean, whatever we need to do to change our ordinance and whatever the law allows, I think this council certainly wants to do that. So
We have time. I know Connie, Dick, if they have comments,
absolutely. Yes, sir.
Is that open?
Yes, I'm Connie Sawyer, and I live there on Church Street, and that boarding house is a nuisance. There's been drug, prostitution, everything going on. There was just an incident just 2 weeks ago where one gentleman was throwing a young lady off the porch.
And this at what location there?
215 East Church Street.
You say drugs and prostitution is going on?
Yes, sir. And I've had one tenant that lived over there to come in my backyard. He was stumbling, drunk, crawling on the ground. So I asked him, what was he doing? What was he looking for? He was looking for his beer, he said. People in our neighborhood and on the park I live, when they see that, they're afraid. They're afraid, and a lot of them are talking about that boarding house. And a lot of people said they wouldn't rent up there because of that boarding house.
Anne Marie, if we have enough people that, or maybe this is for Elizabeth, if we have enough people complaining about the safety factor, I mean, isn't there some type of law that says that you have a right to be safe in on your own property? I'm not sure exactly what the law is, but I was actually had a gentleman quote it to me this morning about another situation. But I would hope that Hood would look at that also, the safety factor of people in their own neighborhoods, on their own property.
There is a statute, and Chief will have to help me with this, and we can look into it, but it's a criminal nuisance. You know, if there are criminal nuisances that result in crime, help me, Chief. Nuisance abatement, yes. So, but we need people to call and police to respond and to be able to document, write summons, prosecute. But that's another alternative, absolutely.
Chief, have you spent some time there lately at the?
I was shocked. Did anybody call the police for that incident? I'm not familiar with it.
This incident that happened 2 weeks ago where the gentleman threw the young lady off the porch. She started to call the police, and then she didn't call them.
So can you help us out next time? Just call
Yes, I can.
It's a good start by having documents. The way we can be aware of it. And then we can get a hold of the landlord that night while we're there.
All right, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one more? None of the prostitution or any of that has been reported to the police department?
We had a talk with Fort Mary about it when he was chief.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what happened, but it's going from the boarding house to the senior citizen building.
Swing.
Every first of the month,
Back and forth.
back and forth.
Okay. Oh.
Do you still have policemen assigned to certain areas like you used to?
Yes.
To patrol?
Yes.
Zones.
She know who patrols her area?
Chief will make sure that the neighbors are reacquainted with their personal police officer. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hey, folks. I'm Dick Heiser. We restored the building at 108 South Oakham. And finally, thank God, we've got our pottery business up and running. Dawson did a great job. We've got a couple more little things she's got to do. He doesn't know that yet. We moved here from near Wilmington, moved our business here. We love the town. That's a given. My wife loves the town. She can't be here tonight. We've had a death in the family. So I'm a little bit addled right now. It's not my side, it's her side. But that said, we have called the police. We've called several times, and we have sent in an anonymous tip. We can't help it. When we're there, we're outside. We can see things that go on. We had friends up that have experience in law enforcement. They took one look outside, so you got a drug deal going down right there. And we watched it, we have called. But, and like today, we had a person on the street. My grandkids would have been there. I was going to call, but I didn't, because they shut up. I think they saw me, and that scooted them back into their residence. But the language, and it sounded like a domestic dispute, and I was waiting for something to happen, but when they saw me, like I say, it ended. So, we're here, we came here, we love Edenton, we like all you guys, we like you guys, we like everybody else. I just am concerned about safety. Not for myself, I don't mind speaking up, but I am concerned about the safety of the neighborhood. And since we did bring a business, I am concerned that when we do have people, we're working with Chowan Arts Council. I also work with other groups in the region over at Pocosin and Columbia, teaching at College of the Albemarle. We're looking to work here to teach here. And we really like to be involved in the community. But I'm just concerned. And that's why I'm here. Because it is bothersome. I think people have rights, but so do I. And we have a right to safety. And that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm more voicing an opinion. So, that's me. Questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to thank you for being here to speak up, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
You know, the old saying, there's power in numbers, and it sounds like we got the numbers that are telling us exactly what's going on. I realize we don't live in a perfect world here, but there are certain things that we can do to kind of help eliminate this, and we will get on it and get busy with it.
I'm going to say one thing for sure. I've seen a lot worse, but I've also seen where it started and watched it get worse, and that's what we don't want. We don't want it getting worse.
You stay in front of Swain?
I'm sorry?
You live in front of Swain, the apartment place down here?
No, we live right at 108 South Oakham. It's between Queen and Church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right next to
that's
Kirby.
right next to
Okay.
the Kirby property.
Still trying to learn the town.
It's the old George Lasseter 1920
Grocery store. I know exactly where you're at
Yeah,
now.
we live upstairs, and we have my wife's a painter, I'm a potter.
Okay.
Used to be a dance studio.
I'm sorry?
Was there a dance studio there?
There was a dance studio there now.
Okay, I
Every
got
now and
you.
then I have to dance because she tells me. Yes, sir.
Well, I've seen on TV that if you see something, say something. It's good that people is not afraid to say something.
Yes, sir.
But however, I almost stopped watching 6 o'clock news because all it is killing. Norfolk, Newport News, Hampton, Suffolk, and in our area.
Yep, that's correct.
It's bad. concerned when they built the new police station. That didn't stop the drug dealers. They just moved another little block down.
Yeah, what we, I can go back to things we've seen, and the problem that we have is I can't prove anything, so all we can do is go to the police department. And we're watching movement, we see things. I wouldn't say prostitution, but when I see men go in the house, come out and leave, and then another man goes in, comes out and leaves, and this goes on, then my assumption is they're having tea. There's more going on.
Right.
Or we have a car pull up on the street, and somebody from the neighborhood, or different places, they come out, they pick them up in the car, and they disappear, and they come back, and they let them out. Something's going on. I mean, you can't be doing that.
But I can tell you this. It's maybe Edenton need more policemen. For one thing, I believe it's getting to a point that one policeman shouldn't be going around by himself.
I agree with that. Yes.
I've seen too much stuff happen, and about on TV. But I don't know how to solve that problem. One thing being a pastor, more people need to go to church.
That would be a bad place to start.
All right, okay.
I'm with you. But that's where I guess kind of where I come from. And Dawson can tell you I'm long-winded. If you say, "Oh, you can tell me shut up, sit down." It's okay. We've been there. I've been there where I've had to see things that I didn't want to see because I've lived in a town that had the problems that we could have. And that's not to be alarmist, but we've seen some things here, and we know it goes on everywhere. We just hope that it doesn't
get nobody hurt.
Right.
Well, as I said earlier, I can promise you we are going to follow up on it. Maybe this is one of those places that we put one of our infamous cameras that has helped in a lot of areas. And it sometimes doesn't catch anyone, but it will make people realize there's a camera watching every time they pull up, and they'll move on. But we will. I promise you it's not going to slip through the cracks.
Okay, and I appreciate you guys. I know it's tough, so thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. So I guess y'all will be working on that with Hood and...
Yes, and the police chief, and we'll also get him
Absolutely.
a plan of action.
Thank you so much. And so we can report back to these people as quick as we possibly can. Thank you. Item number 3 tonight is professional services that Anne Marie has asked us to look at. The town's UDO needs to be updated to address recent changes that the state law was through the General Assembly was made. Dale Holland, who has been a consultant with us for several different times, has provided a proposal for technical services, and unless Councilman Bond or Councilman Roscoe has any problem with that, I'd like to send that right on to full council so that we can get this UDO taken care of to kind of help incidents like we would just heard.
I'm for it.
Okay, well, we'll send that on. Next on our list is a resolution. The Chamber of Commerce recently adopted the enclosed resolution that y'all saw about agriculture. I'm glad y'all did this. Thank you, Wynn. I appreciate y'all's efforts on this, because you're right. Farmers, whether they're hog farmers, chicken farmers, or somebody that's just spraying the wrong thing at the wrong time, or now it seems like everyone wants to sue someone. So if y'all don't have a problem with us sending that resolution to full council, I would love to do that. Is that good with you?
He's on the committee. How many committee? We are administrative.
You're on administrator, okay. All right, we'll send it on. Thank you. We're done, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Last committee meeting tonight is finance, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon, please.
It'll be a very quick meeting. We have two things on. Virginia Smith, our finance officer, signs the checks, and state law now requires that we have a deputy clerk. And Anne Marie has asked that she become the deputy a deputy finance officer. So Anne Marie wants to become the deputy finance officer, and so I'll put that in the form of a motion, and just go to the full council. Yeah. Is that all right?
That makes
So,
sense.
yeah. That way, if she's
Somebody's here.
out of town, she could, Anne Marie could sign the checks. And then we have a budget amendment, which for the 2018-19 budget, we are getting revenue of $10,500 from North Carolina sales taxes, and we're going to the expenses of the same amount for the professional services that we just voted on. So we'd send that on to full committee, or full council. And I think that's it.
Very good. And that completes our agenda for this evening. Thank all of you for being here and sharing your concerns with us. Thank you, council members, for your attention and understanding of some of the problems we have to deal with going forward. So with that, I will close this meeting and